Yes.
Well,
He's still kicking. He's still
all
walking
right.
around.
Welcome to Let Them Talk. I'm Paul DiRienzo.
And I'm Miss Joan Marie Musi.
And welcome our guest, Aron the Pieman Kay. Aron Kay,
Hey,
welcome.
Hi there.
First
Hi,
time we had you
everybody.
over here. Glad we got you here.
Welcome to the show.
Welcome to the show.
Well, I'm glad to be here. Haven't been on a live show in years, but
Except when you call in.
except when I call in, but I'm glad they have returned to the live stage of television.
Really.
Great.
Well, we're really happy to have you.
Right. And we were talking about it just as the show began. We were talking about the photograph behind us. And there's you in 1979. And there is, who is that young fellow with the bald,
That's ex-mayor Ed Koch. This picture was taken by Ronald Gallela, who used to follow Jackie Onassis around. Ron Rosenbaum,
One of the original paparazzi, right?
had a party to celebrate the publication of his book, Murder at Elaine's. It was at Elaine's.
Oh, the party was that's at Elaine's?
Yes, that was at Elaine's.
Now, you're known for pieing people, but it doesn't look like you have a pie in your hand there.
What happens is Ed Koch is there. Dana comes up to me and hands me this joint of Colombian and suggests that I go up to Koch and blow it in his face.
Oh, dear.
Is that what you
Yeah, I
proceeded-
walked up to him and started blowing the pot in his face. Koch goes and says, "Why do you gotta be so obnoxious?"
And what did you answer?
I didn't answer him because he represents an obnoxious class of people.
You should have said, just be happy it's not a pie.
He probably was.
He probably was glad it wasn't a pie.
Right.
Because I almost pied him a few months before when he was at Saturday Night Live. But a cop got right in front of me in line as I was waiting. And then they ran Koch through very quickly.
Now, how many famous people, how many people of note have you pied in your life?
I'll give you my list. William Buckley, Senator Pat Moynihan, Tony Elasowitz, who was the Watergate bagman, E. Howard Hunt, the Watergate bungler, and alleged assassin of President Kennedy. That one, I ran out screaming, "Where were you November 22?" Phyllis Schlafly at a Women's Republican Club luncheon at the Waldorf with apple pie for motherhood and Americanism.
Yeah, do you use theme pies?
Yes,
Is that
why
part of
not?
your-
Why not?
Okay.
If possible. Then I shifted down to Abraham Beame, the ex-mayor.
Before Koch.
Yes, there was at a debate at Cooper Union, which is being broadcast live on Channel 13.
Oh, dear.
I ran in front of the camera as Beame was giving his spiel. He says he made a tough decision. Well, I made my tough decision with Apple Crumb. Because I always call him a big crumb and a big apple.
Right.
And he wouldn't press charges, ironically. A week later, I took an Amtrak down to Washington, D.C. to do G. Gordon Liddy, who had just gotten out of federal prison. That was at the Mayflower Hotel. Same hotel where Ed J. Edgar Hoover used to have his breakfast. Ironically, I had to run down the back steps to get away. And I run into the Secret Service and these Latin American dictators who were in town for the Panama Canal Treaty rigmarole. A few weeks later, Alice Torbush, myself, Scabman, and a couple other people went and did William Colby, the Butcher of Vietnam, Butcher of
Phoenix
Chile.
program.
Yes, Phoenix
Again.
program. I got him with chocolate Bavarian because Bavaria is the part of Germany where Hitler got to start. Alice did him with blueberry cream cheese because he's the
Oh,
ex-cheese.
that's messy.
The ex-cheese of the CIA.
Ooh, that's messy.
And then Scabman and others got him with some eggs.
Oh,
That was at the
wow.
New School on West 12th Street. We were busted for that one. and
I was
fined.
going to ask, how frequently were you arrested? How frequently did you get
Okay.
away? What's your percentage
okay.
on that?
I was busted for the Colby hit.
Okay. Here in New
The,
York.
Yes.
the new school prosecuted that one.
Yes, they pressed it.
You're right. That's why I
Harassment.
boycott the new school, I'm afraid to say. Because they prosecuted you for
Yes,
freedom of pie.
These so-called liberals prosecuted me.
Right.
They were so freaked out, and what happened was, one of them tries to grab Alice as she runs out, and she ripped the guy's tweed jacket down the middle.
Ooh, he wasn't happy
No,
about
he
that.
was unhappy
Oh, dear.
about it.
Unhappy.
It's probably a leftover from his
Right.
high school days.
Now, I first met you, Aron. It was in 1979 in Madison, Wisconsin, and the new pro-landlord mayor of Madison, Joel Skornica, right?
Yeah, he was being sworn in.
Right, and I had been told earlier by some person in the know, or my city councilman actually came
Yes.
over to me and told me I should go to the swearing in, that it would be one of the more memorable swearing ins in Madison history.
And believe me, it was for all the people who were there. Skornica walks past me, and I slammed the pie on his head. You know,
What kind of pie was that?
it was some lemon meringue concoction.
Uh-huh.
And was it
And-
before or after he'd been sworn in?
He was on the way to being sworn
Oh.
in. He had to run to the
I
bathroom.
thought he was
to
about to put up his hand when you got him. Wham!
No, he walked right past me down the aisle,
Right.
and I let him have it.
Uh-huh.
I try to get out of there. Liberal Mayor Mike Soglin turns me over to
Paul
George,
Soglin.
turns me over to George Kroll, the Red Squad cop.
Oh.
Anyway, another cop named Dominic Shiro lets me out, lets me go.
Right. So it's interesting. The liberal mayor turned you
Yeah,
in,
Yes,
and but a cop let you go out the back door.
another cop, yes. But what happens is I find out later on that there was a warrant out for my arrest.
For many years.
For
Yes.
another pieing incident?
No.
For that.
It was for pieing Skornica.
Oh,
They
right.
got me for disorderly conduct. There was a funny thing about this where 14 years later, I was hitchhiking on Route 14 in Arena, Wisconsin. Iowa County, same county where
Uh-oh.
Dana was
Yeah.
busted.
Oh.
Uh-oh.
This cop named Kurt Wilkinson pulls up, right? First he gives me this line, get in the front seat, I'll take you to the next town. Maizomanie.
Because you were hitchhiking.
Yeah. But there was heat because of Ben's Weedstock Festival.
Ben Maisel was doing the Weedstock
Yes,
Festival
that
in
same
Wisconsin, right? That weekend.
Yes.
Oh. Everybody was looking out for hippies.
Yes. And I was wearing
The word
I was wearing a Grateful Dead t-shirt.
Uh-oh.
There's a giveaway.
Yeah,
Right.
So what happens is
Hippie.
the cop runs my name, tells me to get out of the car, handcuffs me frontwards like this. He asked me, am I going to give him a hard time? I said, no, I just want to get this thing over with. So we end up going to Maizomanie. He calls his lieutenant. His lieutenant reads what the charge was, laughing. Even the cop was laughing.
Pieing the mayor of Madison.
Yes, he didn't know about it.
Oh, dear.
He
And
changed his
It's like a
tune
little
once he heard
lesson
what
in
it was.
Yes,
history.
and we rode to Madison. They seemed they were waiting for me there at the jail.
Mm-hmm.
And a few hours later, I was bonded out at 100. Somebody bonded me out at $150. Had to make a few phone calls.
Right.
I was not going to be their overnight guest at the Crossbar Inn.
Right.
And then I called Carl Armstrong, who got me to a motel.
Oh,
for the
great.
night.
Good for Carl.
Because I was tired. I was going to take the bus out the next day back to
Right.
New York.
Right. Well, it was great, talking about Madison. It was great to see Ollie and different people at Dana's. It was
Yes.
horrible to be at Dana's sentencing, but to see some of the old crowd was pretty interesting.
Look,
Well, they really turned out in Madison. Let's say
Yeah.
that Madison Normal got people out for not just the event the night before, but for the sentencing hearing as well. So.
Right. And I guess we should mention we have Brian Walker's thoughts, right? Because we know that he's not doing
I
well.
feel for Brian. Brian was my lawyer, in fact, for this thing.
Oh, really?
I was fined $273 for this. $150, the bail went towards it, and then somebody else put up the rest of it.
And Brian Walker's represented a lot of people, and he's done really an incredible job as a lawyer. And right now he's in the hospital. He's in difficult situation, but we're thinking about him and hoping for the best for him and his family.
He did a lot of good work for Dana.
It'd be nice he comes out of this and we have him back. Right. But we don't know.
No, it's a very uncertain situation.
So everything is each minute at a time, not one day at a time. I go minute by minute.
But let's remember Brian, who's done so much incredible work for everyone.
Brian Walker,
So let's hope he gets what he needs.
Yeah, exactly.
So, Aron, I want to talk. This is great, but I want to go back and get a little story. I want to get your backstory, Aron. Where were you born? How did you get to be the Yippie Pie Man in New York City?
I was born in Canada. My parents are Holocaust survivors. I lived in Buffalo, New York, which is like, figure the culture there at the time was like the last picture show of Dennis Hopper, black and white. I'm 14 years old. I moved to L.A. That was around the time the Beatles first came out. Figure going from black and white to Technicolor in 1964.
Good timing on the move.
And of course, I would go around to the rock clubs in L.A. where I could get access to it at a young age. And I went and instead of following the pop rock garbage that you used to hear in WABC, there was a whole other culture emerging with folk rock, Frank Zappa, the Byrds, and that had been going on for years.
How did it turn from the underground to the overground?
You had people like Terry Melcher and other record producers who brought it out to the overground. People who had an interest in seeing that music get exposure.
And the time was right, culturally, right?
Yes, it was. We had, of course, it was right after the Gulf of Tonkin resolution of Vietnam, and there was a civil rights struggle was happening at the time.
So it was right at the beginning of two big struggles, in the middle of one and the beginning of another.
There was another struggle also.
Yeah.
Figure this. I mean, back then, if a girl fooled around, she got a reputation. Our generation broke that myth.
The sexual revolution.
Yes. Because I remember in 1965, if a girl fooled around, or they would talk about her at school.
Or even if somebody said she did.
Right. Yes.
She didn't even have to do it.
No, she didn't have to. They would just play telephone and mutate the story around. But then that barrier broke down, where it was okay to fool around.
Really? And it was just a new generation came to maturity.
We were coming to maturity at the time. But it wasn't really a generation gap. The media created a generation gap because the whole thing was really a generation mix. Because we had old beatniks who joined the fray also.
Now, what about the Yippies saying, never trust anyone over 30?
That was, that was a way for people who had their doubts to bond with radicals their own age, and then we grow into trusting people who are a little older. The over 30 thing was really mentality.
It was sort of like that movie Wild in the Streets,
Yes.
Right.
Or the way I looked at it, we were into the Beatles and the Stones. The older generation was into Elvis Presley. Whole other culture. Pat Boone and Debbie Reynolds.
Connie Francis, maybe.
Connie Francis. Now you got it.
Right.
You gotta love Connie Francis.
Right. I'm not saying I don't like them, but it's definitely a cultural change there, a shift.
Very interesting.
To the Doors.
And also, Connie Francis was a rape survivor.
Yes.
Right. Oh, yeah, that's true.
Of a terrible situation.
So I feel for her about that. But the thing was that the Beatles and Dylan and Peter, Paul, and Mary were a bridge to something different. Because come fall '65, I was getting newspapers in L.A. such as the KFWB Hitline and the KRLA Beat. They tell us about these new groups. We had Donovan. We had Joan Baez. as I mentioned, the Birds.
Mm-hmm.
They even mentioned Jefferson Airplane because they had started in 1965.
Uh-huh.
And I remember hearing them around 66 when the first record came off.
Uh-huh.
Jefferson Airplane Takes Off. That was just before Grace Slick joined. A woman named Signe Anderson was the lead singer.
Mm-hmm.
She got pregnant, left, Grace joins. And then the airplane really did take off.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Now, how did you go from psychedelia, summer love, LA radical music scene to the Yippies?
Well, okay, I remember wanting to be a freedom rider at the age of 12. And I did watch the March on Washington, seeing Dylan and Peter, Paul and Mary perform. And what happened was we had a war going on, a war in the streets, a race war, a cultural war. We had Vietnam. And I started going to the anti-war demonstrations. I saw a big clubbing happen. At
the clubbing didn't mean like hanging out on a Friday night in the East Village.
No. It was the cops flailing their billy clubs in front of the Century Plaza Hotel in June '67 when LBJ was making his appearance.
Mm-hmm.
All hell broke loose. The LAPD Metro Squad just went crazy on us. In fact, the hotel had a restraining order against us being in front of the hotel. Nothing like that ever happened since. There were protests in that same spot, but they managed to figure out how they were going to go about handling it so it wouldn't happen again.
So how did you get, of all the groups and all the activities and all the affinity groups, how did you get in with Abby and Jerry and those guys?
What happened was, I was fall '67. I went to Israel for a couple months, and I got a hold of a Time magazine edition that talked about the March on the Pentagon, and they had a picture of Jerry Rubin.
When they levitated the
Yes.
We've had folks involved with that on the show as well, so we've been covering this all over here.
We tried to do a levitation of Wall Street also.
Uh-huh.
But what happened is that a few months later, it was either in Rolling Stone or the Free Press. I read about the Yippies and the Democratic Convention in Chicago. My father would use the name Yippie to make fun of us.
Oh, really?
Yes. He says, "You yippie, you yappies, you know, little real."
Like playing on the word hippie.
Yeah, he's playing games with the word.
Your dad was Polish, right? Did he have a
yes?
He had a Polish accent?
Polish Jewish accent.
Okay.
But he was making fun of the whole thing.
Right.
But then when I come home stoned on my butt, there were fireworks.
He didn't like that.
Hey, my mother would go ballistics, but my father. She was the one who's proactive.
It's hard to think of you being, so you're basically a mama's boy, right?
Oh,
no. I stood up to her.
He can respect his parents without
And
being a mama's boy.
I stood up to her.
Good, I'm glad. I know you did.
Yeah, I mean,
and I know you
look,
loved her.
I pulled, there's a term which, okay, there's a term I use called days of hell. And my daughter Rachel gives days of hell to those who don't love animals.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Of course, that's Rachel Kay, who's been on the show to talk about veganism.
Right,
so all you anti-animal people, watch out.
Right. So you're hooked up now with Abby and Jerry and these guys. How'd you wind up in the Lower East Side?
Okay, what happened was prior to that, I was involved with helping organize the Griffith Park Love-Ins, and I was selling the LA Free Press. And I'd be going to all the big concerts.
Right.
Newport 69, Hendrix was there, Monterey, other festivals. So I saw Hendrix or the Airplane or the Dead or Sweetwater, all these bands from those days. But anyway, what happened is that the conventions was happening in 1972. Originally, the Republicans were going to be in San Diego. But Louis Tackwood exposed a lot of stuff that was going to happen with law enforcement.
Right. He was an undercover agent.
He was an informer.
Right.
And all hell was going to break loose. So what happens is everybody shifted gears and went down to Miami. I went to Miami to protest the war. Jerry and Abby were there, Ed Sanders, Tom Prasad, A.J. Woodman, met Dana there.
So basically you guys influenced the whole change of venue of the Republican National Convention in 1972. The fear of protest caused a huge police reaction, which, when exposed, caused such embarrassment.
What happened was, they had plans to organize a buffer squad of blacks and Mexicans, similar to the Guardian Angels. And they were going to bring in all these police forces from all around San Diego, including the dreaded Los Angeles Police Department, under the tutelage of crazy Ed Davis. We had our run-ins with the LAPD.
Right. We're familiar with him through Dragnet.
They beat the hell out of Ron Kovic at a protest.
Right.
Oh, that's terrible.
You know,
in a wheelchair, in his wheelchair.
I was busted at that protest.
Okay. So an anti-war veteran, crippled for life, in his chair.
And what happened was, TACWOOD revealed that there was going to be a squad called Squad 19 who were going to set up explosives at the convention, causing Reagan and Attorney Evel Younger to declare martial law in the state. Well, they didn't get their jollies there. But we still had to put up with all kinds of hanky-panky from law enforcement in Miami.
Right.
And infiltrators, you know.
Just to exercise your freedom of assembly and speech.
I mean, they definitely tried to trample on the First Amendment.
Right.
I mean, Rocky Pomerantz, the police chief, was the House liberal.
Mm-hmm. We're going to have to do more of these stories to get, more of these programs to get to all these stories, Aron. I want to jump. Let me fast forward to Ronald Reagan. That's when you and I started working together.
Yes, we organized protests whenever Reagan would come into town or Nancy Reagan would come to town.
Here in New York, 1980s.
Yes. And we were a thorn on their side. I remember one time Nancy came to I think it was the Met, and they could hear us on
with the sound cannon.
The sound cannon, and they complained about it on Channel 7 News.
Ruining their concert.
Yeah.
So what? And then the first time, we had fun with Reagan on this one. It was the Ballet for Bullets.
Right.
Myself, Ruth, who was pregnant, Dean, who has cerebral palsy. I know some of us were dancing around in tutus doing ballet.
Ballet, because he was at the ballet, and the police were lined up. And that was a very important protest. That was the first protest ever against President Ronald Reagan. It was marked as the first time.
It was the first mass one.
Yeah.
The day before that.
After he was president.
The day before that, Reagan was down in Soho.
Mm-hmm.
The cops wouldn't let Ben Maisel in there, and they actually physically removed him from there.
Mm-hmm.
Our son, at 4 years old, heckled Reagan.
Your son was 4 years old.
Yes, and said, "You take food away from kids, you pig." And you can see Reagan frowning on TV. You could hear him. You could hear the kid carrying on the background.
So even your children are carrying it on the tradition of Aron Kay, right?
And the cops wouldn't let the rest of us go down to where we were, so we were at a stalemate in a cafe somewhere down in Little Italy. So we had one table, the cops had another table.
Mm-hmm. Right. And how did you and I meet? How did you and I, the first project we ever worked on together?
That was one which was one of the best. We kept the nuclear harbor out of New York City. You was working for a public relations agency. You showed me the stuff, and I said, "Let's get the word out." I took you to WBAI. You used a pseudonym, Al Gilman, to keep your job, and we got the word out.
Right. And they interviewed Al Gilman, a famous anti-nuclear expert.
And we also we broke the story in the now defunct Guardian.
Right.
2.5 years later, there's stickers all over the city. Keep the nuclear harbor out of Manhattan.
Mm-hmm. They never got it here.
They never got their harbor.
Thanks, guys.
And the battleships are all mothballed again. They're gone. No more nonsense
maybe
battleships.
But let me put it this way: if they were Israeli battleships, they'd be in matzo balls.
Now I have a question for you, Aron. You're not in shape to pie people anymore.
No.
But what about giving workshops for young activists
Why
on
not?
pieing?
Why not? And I do have some disciples who did Rupert Murdoch. Somebody else got Pat Buchanan.
Because I think pieing should continue.
No.
You know?
Listen, everybody, come on, all you people out there. You all know somebody who needs a pie. It could be a boss, could be a landlord, could be a school principal.
Now, Aron, how can people find out more about you? Do you have a website?
Yes, I have a website.
Oh, okay, let's tell them that. So they
Go visit me at pieman.org or facebook.com/pieman420.
Okay.
And I can be contacted there about pieing.
Right. We'll have to do this again sometime, but we have 2 minutes, Aron. So let's make it your choice. What story do you want to tell?
I want to continue about the harbor.
Okay.
What happened was, it was on the ballot. Koch got it nixed, and I remember one day, the Rock Against Reagan sound system went all over the city with Melanie on it, on a truck, promoting the initiative about keeping the harbor out of Staten Island.
And there was a vote, right? There was a citywide referendum.
No, the vote never got on the ballot.
Okay.
But all the bureaucracy, even the Republicans of Staten Island didn't want it.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Because who
Not
wants nuclear hardware near their kids?
Right next to you.
Right. Nobody wanted, and it would have been right there in Staten Island. And it was a public relations. The whole thing was a public relations by right-wing business interests and the military to bring a small military base in New York to show New York wasn't a liberal, to make it like Norfolk or something.
But the thing is, it didn't quite work out.
Because New York isn't Norfolk.
New York is not Virginia Beach. New York is New York, and people are not going to want a nuclear harbor in their backyard.
Yeah, you could get support from across a wide range of people.
Now, what's that you're wearing on your T-shirt there? You got half a minute.
Well, it's a pot T-shirt.
Oh.
Cannabisco.com.
Oh, okay.
You get it from cannabisco.com.
Okay.
Excellent. All right. And does that mean you think that marijuana should be legal or decriminalized? Or?
Well, I believe in reparations to all people who were screwed by the marijuana laws for each day spent in jail.
They should get money from the government.
They should get compensation. I'm using the fact that people who are survivors of the Holocaust collected money from the German government.
That's on that model.
Yes, because those laws smack of Nazism.
All right.
And I'm thinking of Dana Beale.
Yeah, free Dana
Free
Beale.
Dana
Free
Beale.
Dana.
That's
Free
right.
prisoners of weed.
That's right.